Violence in fantasy. Before I get into it, please be aware this topic may include words which could be triggering for some, so watch at your own discretion. The opinions expressed in this video are my own and are not hard truths or rules that must be followed. This is a presentation of my own thoughts. You may take it as a suggestion, something for writers to consider. Please feel free to discuss in the comments. I would love to see a full discourse on the topic. So here goes. War and violence are endemic throughout human history. There have been tens of thousands of wars and battles over the millennia. Greed and power and evil, self-defense and protection of the weak, family feuds, crackpot dictators, and religious wars fill the history books. So it is only natural that our fictional stories often include violence. However, I believe, and this might be a bias created by the books I read, and is not meant as an indictment on any writers or authors at all, but I believe it sometimes seems that many fantasy writers run the risk of relying on the excitement of a bloody fight or a battle to the detriment of the stories they are trying to tell. The violence obscures a better story, and this issue applies to some of my stories as well. So let's talk about that. This video is broken up into two main parts. The first is a discussion on violence in fantasy and the many alternatives we have. The second part provides tips and advice on how to write action and fight scenes. These two concepts might seem to conflict, but conflict is the topic in this video anyway. Conflict is practically always necessary for a story. The Lord of the Rings, Keki's Delivery Service, The Witcher, The Wizard of Earthsea, Dune, Cowboy Bebop, Conan, My Neighbor Totoro, John Wick, The Hobbit, Game of Thrones, Narnia, Shadow of the Colossus, Red Sister, Berserk, A Tale of Two Cities, Thomas the Tank Engine, and the Bible. All of these stories see the characters at odds with those around them, either on the larger scale of good versus evil, or the intimate level of family disagreements, or even just different moods or personal goals in that moment. The stakes go from world-ending to absolutely minuscule. Conflict is always interesting to readers, and writers can and should use it. But conflict does not necessarily have to be violent. While John Wick is certainly a crazy fun ride, some stories benefit from more realistic day-to-day drama. I somehow doubt anyone watching this video has ever shot someone, or stabbed an enemy in the pouring rain, or beaten up a villain after taking out all their subordinates. Or maybe you have, what do I know? But somehow I doubt it. Humans in general try to get along pretty well. Apart from the psychopathic multi-billionaires and brutal criminals and warmongering politicians of the world, the majority of us normal people just want to live and let live. And we don't often want to fight each other or try to get one over on each other. We just work and eat and sleep and breathe, with the occasional disagreement or perhaps raised voices when we get into a car accident or drink too much. In general, society is built on getting along. And that lack of violence is a good thing. So many fantasy stories are violent and full of violence. As an author, I'm very aware of this because all of the books I've written so far also include plenty of violence. But not every fantasy story requires violence, and nor should they. I believe a good argument, misunderstanding, or personal issue can be just as, if not more, impactful than the average battle scene. In fact, without these initial emotions and disagreements, which are the foundation of practically all physical fights, we would not really care about the fight itself. If the combatants aren't emotionally invested, they would likely not be fighting in the first place. When we drill down into it, what we are talking about here are stakes, personal goals, and the characters' emotions. Us writers need to consider why our characters feel strongly about the issues they face. What drives them? Why are they so invested? How do their needs conflict with those around them? Are they calm people or more prone to anger? Are they being forced into this argument, or do they fight against their wishes? Do they use psychological tactics rather than weapons or fists? Do they use silence to hurt others? Are they selfish or aggressive, or cleverly cruel or sadistic? Do the characters revel in being petty? For non-violent characters, look at authors like Austen, Stephen King, Dostoevsky, the Strugatsky brothers, Charles Dickens, and Ursula Le Guin. There are thousands of writers who build up convincing conflict without any direct violence, and this is a reflection of the majority of people in real life. Also read books with female main characters. The majority of violence in the real world is perpetuated by men. That's a statistical fact. So female characters often reflect the non-violent conflicts and personalities that we are discussing here. Now, in the real world, even the warmongers, gang bosses, and billionaires really do their own dirty work. They scheme and plot and use others to fight and kill on their behalf. They use the banking systems and loopholes in the law to screw over people in non-violent ways. They don't use a gun and cackle away as they divulge their entire evil plan to the victim. They are usually found in the shadows, or in their towers and estates, safe and secure. Or they are clever, quiet, and seemingly normal, hiding under the cover of mediocrity as they do whatever they want to do for their own purposes. The cruel managers of the world, the spineless men who cheat on their wives and then hide their actions behind lies, the cowards who find petty ways to annoy or hurt others emotionally. Those are all different villains in their own right, and very few use violence on the scale we see in fantasy books. Sometimes we can use drama and character arcs to lead up to a single climactic violent showdown. Another alternative is to build up the tension and drama and chaos between characters as if we are going to have a big fight, and then destroy that through a well-placed bit of dialogue, an emotional reveal, a moment of reflection or self-realization, and let all that tension and anger dissipate into something more profound. In summary, don't just default to violence for your villains, and even for your heroes. Try to consider ways your characters can end issues without the need for fighting. Sometimes readers want a good old-fashioned fight. Other times they want a bit of drama, tense dialogue, and political positioning. Sometimes one leads to the other. A good heist is full of tension, drama, and opportunities for character development without the need for violence. A domestic discussion can be as riveting if well written. A workplace relationship between a hostile employer and a powerless employee can be rife with emotion, both in the characters and in the reader. I guess it all boils down to this. Write about humans. Reflect what you see in the world and try to show it in your story with a fresh perspective. Use or break tropes and stereotypes. See what works best for the story you're trying to tell, and try not to just default to a fight scene when you need to pick up the pace or tension. Now, how do you go about writing a violent action scene? I'm going to share some advice that works for me. I've had very good reader reception to my action scenes, but you might prefer other ways to write, and all the more power to you. Point 1. Fewer details. Don't get bogged down in the second-to-second, moment-to-moment movements of the fight. We don't necessarily need to see every punch and kick. nor do we need to know about every gushing vein or broken tooth. We do want to know about major injuries, the character's emotions, setbacks, and wins. We want to see the clever tricks that they use to their advantage, or the curveballs thrown by the enemy. We want spectacle, feeling, and stakes. Point 2. Use shorter sentences. If you use shorter, punchy sentences, you keep the action quick. Naturally, these should be mixed with sentences of regular length, but action scenes are a great place to break the rules. For example, John drew his gun, aimed, fired. The shot went wide, but he was already moving, the adrenaline flooding his muscles. His enemy fired too, a flame of pain across his shoulder, not fatal. He dived, so did his enemy. These short sentences keep us moving along with the characters, with no time to breathe. It's very fun to write. Point 3. Keep it moving. You'll want to keep things fast-paced, but sometimes you can slow down in the middle of a fight to dive into the character's internal thoughts and feelings. Slowing down time for these moments is absolutely fine. Just make sure the action picks up before the reader's emotions vanish, and always try to escalate the stakes, adrenaline, and drama once the ball is rolling again. Point 4. Be creative. Be creative and try to make each fight a little unique. Clashing swords is fine, but it's the absolute bare minimum. Add someone throwing mud, an archer to decide, some magic, and suddenly everything is more complex. Include a loved one who is in danger, or a traitorous friend becoming an enemy, or some other hindrance. Grab a handful of curveballs and throw them at the main character. Change the weapons from default swords and try something else. Spears were way more common throughout history, for example. Or try a mace, flail, dagger, a whip blade, a chainsaw gun, or a multi-bladed fan. Make it interesting. The characters should also use the terrain and the tools around them. Not only do these elements add to the action and drama of the scene, but they help readers visualize the surroundings as well. It's a great way to incorporate world-building elements without slowing things down with bland exposition. Point 5. Consider the other characters. Speaking of surroundings, fight scenes can be about more than just the combatants. Who is witnessing this fight? Do they have a stake in it? Are they trying to help, escape, or are they impartial judges? What do these characters feel, and how do they act? What setting are they in, and how does this dictate their behavior? You can and should ask yourself 1,000,001 questions in every scene, and a fight scene is no different. Add the colour and emotions wherever you can. Always try to be creative to make the fight stand out. Make the reader care about the characters you have so carefully crafted. And I think that's really the summary of the advice in both parts of this video. Make the reader care and don't just accept the default stock standard story tropes. Be interesting. If you enjoyed this video, check out my others as well. I discuss a range of topics for both readers and writers, and I also have a series of shorts called Advice for Writers, which you can binge in the playlist I created. In the meantime, keep writing, read books, be kind, and live generously.